their college disappear. Why? Because the system in our countries cannot accept women as leaders.
I mean, I think he's amazing. He's a great inspiration for young people like myself. You feel that he's talking to you, and he communicates to everybody in their level as well. He would be a reference for the likes of myself or any, Joe Soap. I can't really say Joe Soap, but I mean, Muslim, any Muhammad, if you want to,
At the heart of the Amra Khalid phenomenon is a change in style, if not substance. He's an Islamic scholar, but he looks like a TV star. He preaches a traditional vision of Islam, but appeals to young Muslims who've lost faith in the old order. But some Muslims believe that no scholar, no matter how modern, should dictate the course of Islam's future. In Amsterdam, we met one of the most outspoken Muslims alive today, Irshad Manji. A feminist, a lesbian and a dissident, she was once described by a Muslim leader in her native Canada as a bigger criminal than Osama bin Laden. What puts her in the firing line is her belief that no one has a divine right to interpret the word of God.
The main Muslim leader, based in Baghdad and known as the Caliph, cracked down politically, closed ranks to maintain the unity of the empire. And within a few generations, that meant that Baghdad oversaw the closing of something else, ijtihad, Islam's tradition of independent thinking and reasoning. 135 schools of thought that flourished in the early centuries of Islam were deliberately whittled down to only 4 pretty conservative schools of thought. This led to a rigid reading of the Quran and also to a series of legal opinions, what we now call fatwas, that scholars could no longer overturn or even question, but could now, on pain of execution, only imitate. And that is what we Muslims today are struggling with, that for the next 1,000 years to this very day, Muslim scholars have been repeating each other's medieval theories without much introspection or self-criticism or reflection. The beauty of emphasizing ijtihad is that I'm not asking my fellow Muslims to import a foreign tradition or an alien virtue into the faith, not at all. I'm reminding them that Islam itself once exhibited this progressive pluralistic practice, and that there is no reason, save for pure politics, we cannot have it again.
Irshad Manji's take on Islamic history is still a minority view, but she does raise a genuine dilemma for Muslims. What happens when your personal opinions clash with accepted Islamic practices? For many Muslim women, this is the defining question in Islam today. At first glance, the Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur, mixes old and new, east and west, with deceptive ease. But the growing influence of Islam in politics has tested this country's cosmopolitan image. Almost 20 years ago, the country introduced a system of Islamic law, or Sharia. It was supposed to run parallel with civil law and apply only to Malaysia's Muslim majority. But it's also given conservative scholars a chance to undermine the legal rights of women.
This man divorced his wife through a text message, sent it 3 times, and that was upheld. It said, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. And that divorce was actually upheld as being legal. It was held as legal.
Divorce by text messaging.
Divorce by text messaging.
Sisters in Islam was set up to defend Malaysian women, not by spurning religion, but by using it to protect them. It stresses those parts of the Quran that recognize the property rights of married women and their right to divorce. Of course, they also have to face the less positive verses. And yet when you do read the Quran, or maybe selectively read it, you see a lot of things that seem on the face of it to be so anti-women. Is the Quran an impediment for women or a liberation?
You know, if we believed that it was an impediment and if it was that it was discriminatory towards women, we wouldn't be working so hard with it.
Sisters in Islam has put that theory to the test in the lives of women like Ada Melly.
The people who are in charge of disseminating the knowledge of Islam should go back into the Quran and look thoroughly, you know.
In 1988, Ada entered an arranged marriage. For a year or two, she was happy, but then the abuse began. First psychological and then physical. Her husband banned her from working, driving, and seeing friends. The final straw was his marriage to a second wife. When Ada looked for a divorce, her husband refused, but she fought on, using the Quran as her defense.
When I first knew that he had taken on a second wife, I couldn't stop crying. Then one day after prayers, I turned over a page and glanced upon this verse in the Surah An-Nur.
The Quran became Ada Melly's most powerful ally. Having fired her divorce lawyers, she set out on a lonely struggle through Malaysia's Sharia courts that would last 7 years. She was finally granted a divorce in 2002.
It felt like a whole load of burden went off my shoulders. I was finally free. If there are laws which are causing injustice towards women and children, we need to review them and to see whether is it really Islamic or not.
To the Sisters in Islam, Melly's case says more about their religion than the rhetoric of Muslim leaders. It says Islam can be a force for personal liberation in the modern world, but only when people pay attention to the spirit of the Quran, instead of the man-made rules.
The ultimate contestation then is who has the power to decide which interpretation gets used. And if you look at the wide range of interpretation, right? So you get scholars who say, no, women have to stay at home. There's, you can't go out, you can't wear anything with bells on your feet, you can't wear makeup, and you have to be covered from head to toe and stuff like that. Then you get at the other end scholars who say, no, wait a minute, where did that come from? Because it's certainly not in the Quran. But naturally, those who are at the helm of power don't necessarily like this because it's seen as taking away power, and power is really sweet, and who would want to give it up?